If you added $100 of new revenue tomorrow, could you actually show how it flows through your business? In all likelihood, you can't. You may have a loose understanding and may be able to give us an idea, but too often businesses don't have a deep understanding of how money is moving through their business. In this video today, we're going to talk about that and try and break it down to the simplest possible components that then convert into what this means for you and how you control that cash as it flows through. Every business creates value for customers, for employees, for the owners. But most businesses don't actually see how that value becomes money. They see revenue and profit, but not the flow that connects them all. Business is really, really simple, right? We take value that we create, whatever the customer is willing to pay for. That value becomes revenue when you sell it and profit if you sell it efficiently. That profit then hits the bank when it becomes cash. This is the basic value equation of business. We want to create value to generate more cash. We start with $100 and the goal is to end with 10, 20, 30% more. But once you have cash, you have to decide, what do you want to do with it? And this is the choice of reinvestment. Sometimes this is back into the business, sometimes it's not. But I want to ask you a question. What is our goal when we're reinvesting cash? What, if you sit and think about it, what are we trying to accomplish when we reinvest cash? The goal is to generate the highest level of return. That return can come in many different ways. And I think this is where people often oversimplify this. They assume a return just means a business return. Sometimes you do need to invest money back into the business, back into your people, your systems, your growth, starting that loop all the way again. So creating cash, then going to creating more value and just continuing on in that loop. But other times, that's not the ideal route. Sometimes you have more than you can reinvest, and that's a good problem to have. And other times, you just may want to choose something else altogether. This may be untraditional, but I like to split this into 4 reinvestment buckets. I call these the 4 uses of cash. The first bucket is what we call the reward the owner bucket. You may be asking, why are you starting here? Because again, we talked about the first instinct is typically to reinvest cash. But unfortunately, I've seen business after business not reward the owner and end up with someone who's burnt out and struggling to stay afloat. The next one is reinvesting in the business. You likely thought we were going to talk about this first, and you could argue that reinvesting and rewarding the owner 1A and 1B, it doesn't honestly matter. Next, we have strengthening the balance sheet. You could argue this is a subcategory of reinvesting in the business, but I like to separate it out because there's typically some separate planning about how we go about this. And then last, we have investing cash outside the business. Sometimes the business is not providing the highest return, and this is the goal. Our goal should be to get the highest possible return over the long term. You may think that there's some incongruency here between rewarding the owner, reinvesting, strengthening, and investing outside, but there is not. So let's talk through this and why each of these is important and why each of these are contributing to the possible highest return over the long term. In rewarding the owner, you have a baseline salary, lifestyle upgrades, and retirement funds. If you don't reward yourself today, that could lead to burnout and potential for personal bankruptcy. With business, the game is staying alive as long as possible. And if you take yourself to zero, did not provide for your basic needs, this is going to have spillover into the business and in your personal life. You could say the same for not upgrading your lifestyle when things are going well. If you're making sacrifices and your spouse does not feel the benefit of the sacrifice that you've made, this adds to relationship stress, and business owners have a uniquely high percentage of divorce among them. Stability at home fosters stability in the business. And then last, we have retirement funds. And again, we're talking about the full cycle of returns. By investing into retirement funds when you can, you're providing for a heightened level of return on your dollar 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road. A lot of business owners don't invest in retirement, and I completely get it and understand it. But there's a time and place for doing so. And often business owners feel like they have to reinvest everything in the business, and that is not always the optimal path. Next, in reinvesting in the business, I think most of us understand this is as we're growing, we need to hire people, we need to introduce new product or service lines, introduce new markets, and spend on the capital expenses that come up in a growing business. I split these into growth and maintenance capex. So, growth being the things you need to grow, maintenance being the things you need to maintain the business. This reinvestment comes because the business is growing and you need the funds to fuel that growth. But we don't want to always assume that this sort of reinvestment is the best reinvestment. The biggest mistake that business owners make is they don't set aside enough cash before they need it. This, again, is part of the planning that we want to do to not find ourselves in the same situation we've been in the past. So, this flows us into strengthening that balance sheet. You'll notice CapEx is obviously something that's on the balance sheet, but I view this reinvesting in the business as one unique way we go about it. And then I view this strengthening the balance sheet as something that's completely different. This is restructuring debt, improving working capital efficiency, and building cash reserves. Again, these are soft categories. We could have different categories, but these are the ones that I see most often. The goal here is to improve the stability of the business. So when I talk about strengthening the balance sheet, that is why that new capex is not here. Is that these are actions that you take to uniquely improve the stability of the business to make it more likely you survive into the future. And then last, we have investing outside the business. I'm not going to talk about the specifics here, but often business owners have little pet projects outside of their business of ways they like to invest or spend money, and those things are not bad or wrong. We just want to make sure when we're doing that that we're evaluating which is the highest and best use of our return, because again, we're maximizing lifetime returns. I do want to be clear. This does not mean that we're looking for the dollar for dollar percentage increase. We're not always chasing 20% over 10%. We're doing this in a way that maximizes the returns that allow you to have the quality of life you want to have. So sometimes that means that that lifestyle upgrade is the right choice because it's going to allow you over your full lifetime to get the highest level of return. There's always some softness here. We don't always have all the answers. There's going to be some feel, and that is every business is different and every business owner is different. You could have the same exact business with the two different business owners that may have very different priorities because their personal priorities are different. One wants to grow and become public. One wants to build just a small local business. They could be serving and doing the exact same thing, but they have completely different goals. That is going to change how they approach these uses of cash. As long as your decisions align with your business goals and personal goals, I encourage you to act on what you know is best for those lifetime returns. This is a preview of my workshop that we're doing, which is 5 days to financial clarity for you in your business. If this is something that's interesting to you, I'd love to have you join us. We have a guaranteed ROI. If you do not make more money in profit or cash than what the cost of the cohort is, we will refund your entry, no questions asked. The link is down in the description. I hope that you'll join us in the next cohort.